Late April 1945. Southern Germany was no longer a nation at war, it was a landscape in collapse. Across a shattered Luftwaffe airfield near Ansbach, the ground lay scarred by bomb craters and scorched fuel stains. Hangars stood ripped open like broken ribs. The rain fell steadily, cold and indifferent, washing ash into shallow streams across the concrete. Beneath one partially collapsed hangar roof stood a group of young women, Luftwaffe signals auxiliaries. They were barely out of their teens. Their uniforms, once symbols of service to the Reich, now hung loose and soaked. Their boots were split, their fingers swollen, cracked, some already blackened by frostbite. For weeks, they had been ordered to keep communications alive as the front disintegrated, dragging cables through ice, repairing frozen switchboards, working without heat, food, or rest. Their leather coats had been taken by retreating SS units days earlier. No one replaced them. Now they waited. They had been told what would happen next. They had heard the broadcasts. They had memorized the warnings. The Americans, they were told, were brutal, undisciplined, vengeful. They would humiliate them, hurt them, kill them. Then through the smoke, an olive-drab jeep rolled onto the airfield. An American sergeant stepped down slowly. No rifle raised, no shouting, chewing gum, a cigarette tucked behind one ear. Behind him, two soldiers lifted wooden crates from the vehicle. The women stiffened. Some lowered their eyes. Others clenched their numb hands inside torn sleeves. The sergeant opened the first crate. Inside were gloves, thick fleece-lined American flying gloves, unused, clean, soft. He reached in and began handing them out, one pair at a time, calmly, methodically, no speeches, no orders. Just gloves. Frozen hands hesitated, then reached forward. Fingers that hadn't felt warmth in weeks slid into leather, still carrying the faint scent of new hide and factory oil. One woman began to cry, quietly, in disbelief. This moment, small, almost invisible, would become unforgettable, because it shattered something far larger than the cold. For 6 years, Nazi propaganda had insisted that America was weak, that its soldiers fought only for money and comfort, that capitalism would collapse under real sacrifice. Yet here stood proof to the contrary. The United States had fought across an ocean, across a continent, through France and into Germany, and still had enough to spare. Enough gloves to give to enemy women shivering on a ruined airfield. American war diaries from the region record the distribution plainly. Winter flying gloves issued to captured Luftwaffe auxiliaries suffering frostbite. Morale effect significant, but morale was only part of it. What truly collapsed that day was belief. Only 5 years earlier, these same women had stood on clean runways under summer skies, watching Messerschmitt fighters lift into the air. They had believed the Reich would last 1,000 years. That Germany's enemies were decadent, fragile, inferior. Now the sky belonged to someone else. Above them, American P-47 Thunderbolts circled slowly, unhurried, confident, burning fuel and ammunition Germany no longer possessed. They did not need to rush. They owned the air. The contrast was devastating. A captured signals clerk later wrote in her diary, "They did not shout, they did not strike us, they dressed our hands." That realization cut deeper than hunger. Because abundance is persuasive, in ways violence is not. While Germany rationed scraps and patched uniforms from the dead, American industry had produced millions of gloves, boots, trucks, radios, and still had more. One pair of gloves weighed almost nothing, but it carried the weight of an entire system. Within days, something changed. The women spoke. They volunteered information. Not under threat, but under understanding. Fuel dumps, equipment caches, officers hiding among civilians. The American Army noticed. Psychological warfare reports from spring 1945 observed that material generosity consistently produced cooperation faster than intimidation. Across Bavaria, across collapsing airfields and abandoned depots, the pattern repeated. Chocolate, cigarettes, blankets, gloves, each small item quietly dismantled years of indoctrination. Because the Reich had promised strength through cruelty and delivered only scarcity, the Americans delivered strength through surplus. In photographs from that final spring, you can still see it. German women in defeat, hands wrapped in American leather, white fleece against gray uniforms, no chains, no spectacle, just warmth. This is how empires truly fall. Not only when tanks break through defenses, But when the story they tell about the world is proven false, palm to palm, the Third Reich was defeated by bombs and bullets. But it was undone by something far simpler: the realization that a society could fight a global war and still have enough humanity left to clothe the enemy. That is what those gloves meant. Somewhere today in a quiet German town, an old woman may still remember that moment. She may not recall the sergeant's name, but she remembers the warmth. And with it, the moment she understood that strength was not what she had been taught. It was something else entirely.